אחר הצהריים טובים לכולם. בואו נראה שכולם בסדר. מצוין. מי שנוהג בבקשה לא להסתכל על ההרצאה, רק להאזין. וכרגיל אני אפתח בנימת תודה, כרגיל לכולם שהגיעו ושוב הקדישו מזמנם, כמובן לדורין, שפינתה מהימים העמוסים שלה עבורנו. מעריך את זה מאוד. אז כהקדמה, תעשו לה, שומעים טוב, נכון? הכל בסדר. מצוין. אז ככה, כהקדמה, מי שלא מכיר או פחות מכיר, שמי ניצן פלג, אני סמנכ"ל חברת סידביז, בין היתר ממקימי הקהילה שלנו. מי שפחות מכיר, יש כאלו שאני רואה פרצופים מוכרים, מהקבוצות ומהפעילות, אז אנחנו עושים לא מעט הרצאות, העשרה ובאמת דברים שמגיעים מאנשים בכירים שנמצאים בקהילה שלנו. חודש יוני הוא חודש שמוקדש לנימה קצת יותר שקשורה לקרנות הון-סיכון, VCs. אני חושב שזה מושג שאין מישהו שלא נתקל בו בסטארט-אפ שלו, וזה לא משנה מה השלב שלו. קצת מזווית הראייה של הצד של הקרן, דורין בא באמת להעניק לכם את ניסיונה. לא משבחים באדם בפניו, אז דורין גם תציג באמת את הרזומה שלה, ובאמת מהקצת שדורין ואני עבדנו, אז היא באמת הכינה לכם פרזנטציה מאוד מאוד מעניינת. זה בגדול, כמו שאתם מכירים, ומי שלא מכיר, אז אני אעשה את זה ככה ממש לסיום. כמובן יש זמן בסוף לשאלות, תמיד תעלו את זה בצ'אט פה, אני מרכז את השאלות, ואז באמת נעלה את זה במסודר לדורין. דורין, אחר הצהריים טובים, מה שלומך?
שלום, מעולה, מה שלומך?
הכל מצוין, שוב תודה שבאת, באמת, אני גם רואה פה שיש נוכחות טובה, הרבה מאוד נשים ואנשים שבאמת באו לשמוע אותך. הכנת לנו מצגת, תסבירי לאנשים קצת מי יושבת מולנו, ובאמת שיהיה לנו המון בהצלחה. תודה.
תודה רבה. היי לכולם, כיף להכיר אתכם דרך זום, אני גם אשמח מתי שמישהו רוצה לדבר בטלפון, בקפה, פשוט שלחו לי מייל. אני אתחיל בזה שאני ישראלית אמריקאית, אז כדי שכולכם תקבלו את ה-value הכי גבוה מהתוכן שהכנתי לכם, נאלצת להסביר את הכל באנגלית, או את רוב הדברים באנגלית, אבל את ה-Q&A אני אעשה בעברית, ואם למישהו יש שאלה על משהו שאמרתי בגלל השפה, פשוט תכתבו לי בצ'אט או משהו כזה, ואני אעצור ונסה להסביר את זה בצורה אחרת.
בדיוק, אנחנו באמת נרכז, ואז באמת ככה, בשביל שכולם באמת תסופקו, נעשה את זה במסודר, ותודה דורין, שעל ההתחשבות.
מהמם. Okay, so, when Itzan came and said, what do you want to talk about? I was thinking, from a founder's perspective, what would I have wanted to know, or what would I want to know if I'm about to establish a startup or thinking to establish a startup? And what I thought about sharing with you guys today is really a high-level overview along with a lot of details on what does the process look like? How do I get to an idea? How do I create market validation? How do I select the right partners, whether it's a co-founder, whether it's a VC investor? And when it comes to VC investors, there's a difference between who's going to lead you around and who's going to just join you around, and which VC do I want? Who's the right partner for me in terms of angels, in terms of advisors, and so on and so forth. I do get a lot of questions about what does an initial meeting with a VC look like when you're starting to raise and starting your roadshow. So I'll go into that as well. And then I'll talk about what happens next. So you got to your initial investment, amazing. Machshav, what are the critical pain points of your startup from series seed to A to B and beyond? So without further ado, if someone also has something that I'm not going to cover, please, I'm more than happy to do so at the end or whenever. If you feel like stopping me in the middle, that's totally fine too. Yada. So a little about me. As I mentioned, I'm Israeli American. So I was born in Israel, raised in Chicago. I did my first degree at the University of Illinois. Would I already see someone in the chat? Okay, it's on. So I did My first degree at University of Illinois, I studied psychology, business, and informatics. Informatics is like, I did a lot of computer science, information systems. And this really encompasses my 3 areas of interest, which I listed at the bottom: people, business, and technology. I really think this is the essence of the venture world and of the startup world. In terms of the last 10 years, so I moved back to Israel when I was 23. This is after having worked at a company called Conversant, which started as a startup by Yair Goldfinger. He's a famous serial entrepreneur in Israel. He created ICQ, amongst others. This company was called Conversant, and we were acquired for $2.3 billion. This was about 10 years ago. After that, I moved to Israel. Didn't really know what I was going to do. Didn't have a set plan. I was just kind of exploring all sorts of things. I worked at a couple of startups doing business development. I worked at Microsoft, and there I was in the Microsoft for Startups department, connecting between the corporate stakeholders of Microsoft's customers and the startups in the accelerator and M12. So this, in essence, was my entry into the whole value creation world. Very fast into my journey at Microsoft, I was pulled into Glilot. I spent 5 years at Glilot Capital, which is an early stage VC here in Israel. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the next slide. And 2 months ago, I joined a global VC headquartered in the United States called NightDRAGON. And I'll explain a little bit about NightDRAGON to you in a second. But the most important thing I wanted you guys to take away from this is that everything that has to do with startups and with business really has to do with the person across from you, with connecting with that person, because sales is all about connecting with who you're talking to, figuring out what do they want, how do I create a win-win, and this touches on the business. So every business interaction has to be a win for me and a win for you, and you have to have the network to support that. And finally, of course, you have to have a very good technological understanding. When you're in venture, you learn about all sorts of different solutions all the time. So you have to have both a high-level overview into what trends are happening, what's going to happen in the future, and then also be able to do that very deep dive into the specific technologies that you're going to invest in. And as a founder, of course, you have to have strengths in your area, but not just that. You need to kind of have this technological understanding that applies to more than just your solution, rather all the solutions in your space and the space that connect to it. Okay, so in terms of Glilot Capital, and I'm explaining this because I'm about to give you guys a presentation on what to expect as a founder. And if I was you, I would want to know, what do I know? You know, I don't have 3 startups and 3 exits behind my belt, but I did work for 5 years establishing the value creation of Glilot. And so this means, you know, I worked with about 25 different companies very intensively, hand in hand with the founders from day one. And day one for Glilot means, you know, you just have an idea. You don't yet have an MVP. You don't yet have a product. So before I joined, the VC was pretty small. You know, assets under management was around 100. Today it's 700. The exits that we had were 5, and today it's 16. We had 7 active portfolio companies in 2018 when I joined. Today, there's more than 30. So there's been a lot of growth for that VC, and I was, you know, lucky to be a part of it. Part of my role there was building all of the infrastructure for the different departments, whether it's value creation, but not only, as I also managed the marketing department. And I also worked on a lot of fundraising. So raising the various funds, 2 or 3 funds that were happening in the last 5 years. But in terms of value creation, you know, when I started, we didn't know what we were going to build here. We wanted to help our portfolio companies advance and provide this level of structured and data-driven support. But we had to figure out what are the main pain points of the startups at that stage. You know, there's all sorts of pains, but what's the most critical ones? And in a seed stage company, your most critical pain point is product market fit. And so the most robust program that we built in value creation was called Mach 5. And this is a program that takes 2 founders, their idea, and gets them to product market fit in around 6 months. And this is something very unique because typically it takes companies, it can take 2 years to get to product market fit. And, you know, a few years ago, more than 5 years ago, the way it used to work is that you'd have an idea, you'd start building it, and you'd spend a lot of time and money on creating the technology to support your idea and creating your platform. Now, only after you'd go to the market and try and sell it. Now, this is problematic because it doesn't mean that just because you have a good idea, it doesn't mean that the market is ready for your idea or that it's the right market. So this idea of connecting the market to the idea very early on is extremely important, and that's what product market fit is all about. So beyond product market fit program, we also had programs around angel investing, executive hiring, taking a company out of stealth, different marketing programs, workshops, and beyond. And in order to support this portfolio of 30 companies, I needed to have a resource that is something that's scalable. So we then built and managed the advisory board of Glilot, which went from 0 to 150 different advisors. And these advisors are C-level executives, and they are decision makers in their respective companies. So I'm talking about people like the CISO of Google or the CTO of Atlassian, the CIO of ServiceNow, all the C-levels that are responsible for that domain. So if we're investing in a security company, I want to talk to the CISO and so on. So we had 150 different C-levels, this advisory board, which grew to be quite massive. And of course, I had a team. It wasn't just me, the value creation team. And this is what we had to manage. So on one side, we had the portfolio companies. On the other side, we had the advisory board. And we were continuously creating these win-wins between the two. On top of that, I was also working on fundraising, as I mentioned, so hosting all of the annual LP meetings and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about value creation. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay.
No.
Okay, and something also very important to say about value creation, see it on the next slide, is how do you measure it? A lot of people wonder. So first you need to, look at what are your resources? And this is the advisory board. So you have 150 people on the advisory board, and this is people that are extremely busy, that I would need to, form trust and form very strong relationships with them so that, when we had an urgent due diligence process and we needed to make an investment decision in 24 hours, I am able to reach out to 6 different CISOs and get them on the phone within a day, because we all know how fast things worked in 2021, also in 2022. Today, it might be a little bit slower, but still having this very deep, high engagement with these executives is something really critical for a VC and for a startup. Also, my team and I were responsible for 70% of the startup's first major deals. So a seed stage company, if they have 5 customers, we typically would bring 3 or 4 of those customers came from our network. Overall, we closed hundreds of different POCs and deals for them. We were on 300 or more due diligence discussions, meaning, a brand new company that we're now evaluating for investment with a C-level decision maker, understanding what the C-level is, thinking about the solution, what works, what doesn't work, how does that startup pitch, and all the things that go into that, and thousands of different discussions with portfolio companies and the advisory board. So in essence, having access to this robust platform, AKA the market, is what enabled VCs like Glilot to make very fast and smart investment decisions. So value creation is much more than just working with the portfolio. It's actually really enabling good investment decisions. And when you make good investment decisions, you have good returns. And when you have good returns, you have a much easier time raising the next fund. Okay, now that was Glilot. And now I've joined NightDragon. As mentioned, it's a global VC headquartered in the United States. I'm the first international employee. I'm responsible for investments in EMEA. So not just Tel Aviv, and not just Tel Aviv, of course, Israel, as well as, Paris, Berlin, London, and so on and so forth. We were founded by Dave DeWalt. He is pretty legendary when it comes to security and when it comes to being a leader in different companies. He was the CEO of Documentum, sold Documentum to Dell EMC for close to $2 billion when he was 32 years old. He then was CEO of McAfee, sold McAfee to Intel for $8 billion in the largest ever cyber M&A. After McAfee, he was the CEO of FireEye, and so on and so forth. He works very closely with the Biden administration. He's on boards like Five9 and Delta Airlines, and has a lot of access to the world's top leaders when it comes to cybersecurity, safety, privacy, and national security, which is our investment focus. So unlike Lilot, NightDragon is actually a growth VC. So, we are working and targeting companies that already have generated revenue. They have reached product market fit. They have reached go-to-market fit, and I'll explain more about those two terms soon, and are now looking to scale. So because our team has such strong operational and execution skills, this is the strengths that we're now using when we work with our portfolio companies. And this year we were actually ranked Security Investor of the Year, which was really exciting. And obviously I just joined, so I had nothing to do with that, but it's very exciting to join such a strong and talented team. So if anyone wants to learn more about NightDragon, feel free to always ping me. Okay, now we start. So what does a startup need? I want to lay it out really, really pashut. So a startup needs a good idea, right? But it needs a good idea that solves an urgent pain, and it needs the right team to build it. There could be 10 different teams that are trying to solve that same problem, but it might be that none of those teams except for one is the right one to solve it. 2, it needs to raise capital to fund their business. Then it needs to generate revenue, AKA have paying customers. And finally, it needs to profit in order to return the initial investment to the investors and to the shareholders and earn a return. So where does a good idea come from? And I'm going to go into each one of these during the presentation. So starting with number 1, where does a good idea come from? When you're thinking of what kind of startup to create, the first thing I would do is think about, what am I good at? What's your expertise? Couple that with the market validation piece, which a lot of founders overlook. So market validation in essence means talking to the market and figuring out if the idea that you have is actually relevant for today's market. So you need, in essence, to solve an urgent problem for a market that's ready and willing to pay, and provide a strong enough competitive edge in order to beat any existing solutions or the competition. And by existing solutions, I don't just mean another startup. I mean, how is that problem solved today? And why is the way I'm going to do it better? So it doesn't just mean another startup, it means the way it's working today. Okay, so when you start with an idea, first thing, what am I an expert in? And then, is that space actually growing, right? Let's say you have a check on that. Is the space growing? Yes, great. Now I want to think about my product market fit. What's my hypothesis around it? What do I believe is going to be my product market fit strategy? And it starts with the questions that I listed here. So who is the decision maker that I'm going to target in terms of my customer? So I'm going to probably use security a lot in this presentation, just as an example, because it's my area of expertise. So let's say I'm a data security startup, and that's my idea. I have a really good idea for a brand new data security company. So I'm thinking, who's the decision maker in terms of the customer that's going to buy my solution? Probably the CISO, but it's not always a CISO. It could be actually the security engineer. And who's my user? Is it the CISO or is it the security engineer? Are they one and the same? Are they different? This is important to consider because the messaging and who I'm targeting is going to be different for each type of persona. Then I want to ask, okay, how is my problem that I'm solving for? How is it solved today? How much money do they spend on it? Why is how they're solving it today not good enough? And how is what I'm going to build going to make their lives easier? And now something that I wanted to tell you guys that I think is important to consider is that when you're building a company, oftentimes I see, and especially in the security space, companies that are just optimizers. So let's say it's an idea to make Salesforce more efficient so that the customer gets more bang for their buck, you know? This is something that's completely different than being a replacer. You know, are you going to actually replace an existing solution? Are you going to replace a process? Are you going to make an impact on this company, on this customer? Are you actually going to change the way that they work? Are you going to be a platform, or are you just going to be a feature? And this question has to do with, are you urgent, or are you just a nice to have? Okay, so some tools that you can use when brainstorming your idea, and this is aside from market validation, which I'll get to in a second, is Gartner, PitchBook, any type of, you know, database like that shares a lot of thought knowledge. I would follow different startup news, Calculist, TechCrunch, follow different solutions. Let's say I'm, again, a security startup, so I would definitely want to follow, you know, all of the recent acquisitions in the security space, who acquired them, what amount did they acquire them for, what does that company do? I would want to follow the category leaders, you know, so if I'm maybe thinking of something in cloud, so I would want to follow Wiz and Orca and Aqua and all of those category leaders and see what kind of, you know, thought leadership articles they're putting out there as well. And then I'd also look at PRs. And when you look at PRs, I would pay attention to who's mentioned in those PRs. So when a company launches out of stealth, meaning launching out of stealth means that, you know, I've raised my seed funding 8 months ago, and today there's an article on Calculist saying Doreen startup raises $10 million seed round. That's launching out of stealth. So I would then go ahead and read this article, not me, Doreen, me like you. I would read this article and see who is listed there. So typically, you know, there will be strong angel investors in the round, or, you know, the VC will of course be listed there. So these are people I'd want to have in mind so that I can then approach them, talk with them, have them in my network. And this is really important for market validation. What does that mean? It means talking to people. I would speak to approximately 50 different decision makers, can be 40, can be 60. And when I say decision makers, I mean the one who's actually going to buy your solution. Ask them questions, collect the data. So don't just have a conversation with no notes, actually, you know, and do it consistently so that you can see the different patterns in the data. This is really important for product market fit, because if you ask the same question to 50 different CISOs, you're going to get an answer because you're going to be able to see the trend in the data. So there's two different approaches that you could take when you're talking to these decision makers and when you're validating your idea. Approach number one, I offer product X to solve problem Y, meaning you're not telling them that you're in this ideation phase. You're more so saying, I already have this company. I already have this technology, the MVP, blah, blah, blah. I'm working on it. This is what I'm solving, and then go from there. The other approach is saying much more open-ended, saying, you know, what are your main pain points that you're dealing with today in your day-to-day? So if I'm going to the CISO of Atlassian, I'm saying, Adrian, what are your most critical pain points? You know, what keeps you up at night these days? And he'll tell me, he'll say, you know, data security is really important. The solution that I'm using today is not good because X, Y, Z. Or I'm having a lot of trouble with this, and the problem is with that. So this enables you to come from a more, I'm going to help you approach. And it's much more open-ended. So you can gather a lot of different data, and you can actually start thinking about ideas that you never even had before, because it's, again, much more open-ended and can take you to different places that you weren't thinking of. So if you're going to take approach number one, which is I have the startup, this is what we're building, this is the solution, this is the problem we're solving. So here are the questions and the things I would consider. First, you'd want to gauge the urgency. So does the problem that I'm solving actually exist for the market? And so if I'm talking to 50 different CISOs and 40 of them said they didn't really resonate, so I guess the problem doesn't really exist, or it's just not that urgent. If it does exist, let's say, you know, 40 of those said yes. So I'd want to then ask, okay, so the problem exists, and how are you solving it today? Are you the one that's using this platform? Are you responsible for it? Is it your KPI, or is it someone on your team that would use my solution? Then what kind of target organization are you going to have? Are you targeting Fortune 1000 organizations with, thousands of employees? Or is your solution more geared towards SMBs, those small to medium-sized businesses with, maybe more of a traditional tech stack that's not cloud first or things like that? So all of these different target organizations is something you should consider when you decide to do your market validation, because you need to choose wisely. You don't just want to ask 50 different CISOs all these questions. You want to say, well, maybe I don't know yet who my target organization is. Maybe my solution is applicable for cloud-first unicorns and for massive enterprises. So 25 people are going to come from those cloud-first unicorns, and the other 25 CISOs are going to come from the enterprises. And that way, you're talking to everyone. You're getting feedback across the board so that then you can figure out what's your sweet spot. Okay. When it comes to your value proposition, you're going to obviously give a pitch, right? Because you're talking to these CISOs. You're going to say, this is my company. This is what we do. This is me. This is my background. This is our roadmap, etc. You're going to want to go into, what layers make up your platform, because typically you're solving a specific problem, but starts with, a layer of, let's say, visibility. And then the second layer can be, bringing in a bunch of new alerts from your different security tools. And the third layer can be prioritizing these alerts. So you want to really dig into, what does my product look like? And what's my technology in terms of my MVP? What use cases am I solving? So I'm going to help you solve X, Y, and Z. And then I'm different from existing solutions because of that. So always competition is something that typically comes up on these discussions, especially if there's a clear competitor. But something that a lot of founders miss is that competition, again, doesn't have to be just another startup. It can be the way it works today. So if the way it works today is Excel, let's say, super manual, super annoying, frustrating, that's also somewhat of a competition. Because, I'm going to help them replace their whole way of doing things by coming and giving them access to my platform. So that's another thing to consider. So all of these are questions that you can ask during your market validation phase. And again, this is way before you have an investment. This is just when you're thinking about your idea. And, these 50 conversations, they won't come all at once. It takes time, especially if you don't have the connections. So, at the beginning, when I was just at Glilot and we didn't have an advisory board, I was sending 30, 40, 50 emails a day to different C-level execs trying to get their attention. So it takes a lot of time, but it's really important because it will help you really frame your idea and get the validation you need to figure out whether there's urgency, whether you're targeting the right market, whether this market is actually willing to pay. Because let's say it's everyone says, yes, it's a great idea, but when it comes down to it, they don't actually plan to have you in their tech stack. They don't actually plan to give you money. So what good is that? It's not going to contribute to your revenue. So all these things are what I would consider while you're in this ideation phase. The second approach that I mentioned, which is a more open-ended approach, is talking to these C-level executives and, starting with, what are your pains? What do you deal with every day? How do you solve them? Why is it not working for you? How does your ideal solution look like? And how much would you pay for that? These answers to these questions from 50 different C-levels is like a gold mine. You will have the clear answers to what company you should be building. And the approach that you can take here, again, is more, I'm here to help you. The CISOs, when you take this approach, or CISO or whoever it is, they understand that you're now building a solution, meaning that you can build it to tailor their needs. So they have, they're more than happy to kind of give their pain, because you're going to solve their problems for them. So this approach of, building that relationship, building that trust, I'll provide you with access if you kind of help me with this feedback, things like that creates a clear win-win. And obviously not every C-level executive wants to take part in these kinds of discussions, but you just need to figure out who are those forward thinkers. And a way to predict or to determine and indicate who are these forward thinkers that you want to talk to is by just reading about them, looking at their LinkedIn. Let's say I see someone like a CTO who doesn't have a picture, doesn't write much on their LinkedIn, doesn't speak at events. Most likely that person is not the one I want to talk to. I want to talk to the ones that are really active, that write blogs, that go and speak at RSA and speak at, Cybertech, and they want to be in the industry. They want to help, give back to their colleagues and to the ecosystem and make an impact. And those kind of people are much more likely to be open to innovation and to want to talk and to want to help you at the end of the day. So the next part to, having that good idea that solves an urgent pain is finding the right partners and the right team to build it. So of course you need to pick people that you trust, people that, have expertise in the domain that you're in. And when it comes to picking a VC, it's always very valuable to pick a VC that has those structured programs that are going to help you. So a VC that's hands-on and that already, has that value creation team or marketing team or whatever in place, that their job is to help you with it. So they also have that wide connection and all the resources to the US. Most likely, if you're building a B2B company, your target market will be the US. So talking to VCs that have that footprint is obviously very helpful. So 4 different types of people. And I crossed out behind because they're not going to be behind you. You want people that are with you in it for the long haul, because this journey is like filled with ups and downs, as you guys all know. So starting with the co-founder, a lot of the time, the strongest teams are ones that have known each other and worked together for years. So people that were together in the army, people that were together in school, people that work together. So I would first look at your inner circle, figure out, who do you trust from these people? Who do you want to work with? And who do you feel will be a good partner during this, up and down type of journey? If let's say you can't think of anyone, so network. So you can start by, talking to different people for coffee meetings. This can be through VCs. So a lot of the time I get pings from different people that are just saying, hey, I'm thinking to start a company. Wait, I have a chat. אוקיי, נראה לי נענה על זה בסוף, אם זה בסדר?
כל השאלות בסוף, דורין. את יכולה לרוץ עד הסוף.
Okay. Okay, so the first thing, when you're networking, a lot of people miss the fact that they can talk to VCs, because a lot of potential founders reach out to VCs and say, hey, I have a great idea, but I don't have a co-founder. Do you have anyone in mind? And obviously those earlier stage VCs like Lilot, like YL, like Up West, like Stage 1, those types of VCs get these inbound messages all the time. So if you talk to those VCs, they can easily match you with someone. Actually, we've done this a few times in Glilot as well. We've matched people and they've built very, very strong companies together. Aside from VCs, you can join social media groups or communities such as this one. You can also just look on LinkedIn and kind of filter out what type of people you want and cold message them, ask to go to coffee, go to networking events, be on top of those PRs. And I say that because, again, like if I'm reading the PR about Wiz's $300 million round and I see all these people listed there, I want to go now and talk to all those people. I want to go to coffee with them. I want to get to know them because if they're serial entrepreneurs themselves, they have vast networks that can be very, very helpful for you. I just know a friend of mine 2 days ago was talking to one of the founders of a unicorn, and because he's looking to establish a startup. And so this founder of the unicorn connected him with his potential co-founder. So this is something that you can do too. And the idea is to brainstorm together, obviously to bond and to make sure that what you want in both the short and the long term is the same, or at least very close to being the same. Because if you want a fast exit of, 2 years, $50 million versus, let's say your partner or potential partner wants to build a global public company that's going to IPO, you will clash at some point and it's not going to be good for anybody. So talk about it. Talk about what you plan to do, what you want to do. Talk about what strengths you have, what weaknesses you have. See if it meshes, if you guys have chemistry, and if I'm really strong in tech and my partner is really strong in the business and sales, of course that's a clear win. So that's in terms of co-founders. VC investors. So if I want to now find, let's say I have my co-founder, next I want to start my roadshow. I want to start talking to VCs. And again, I want to say that when you reach out to VCs, you don't need to be raising right this second. It's perfectly okay and even good to reach out to VCs before you start officially raising and forming those connections, building the foundation first. They'll help you because you can bounce ideas off them. They'll connect you to people, etc. So if I'm going to now raise or thinking to raise in the next 6 months, I want to first map out the different VCs that I'd potentially want to work with. So if it's in the security space, there's clear winners of VCs that are very strong in security. If it's health or health tech, there's clear VCs that, are specializing in health tech. So, map out the ones that you'd potentially want to work with. And I personally favor the ones that are domain experts because they've seen many companies in your domain. They're really in it every single day, rather than the ones that are more generalist. But of course, it's up to you. The second thing is if you don't know the VCs, you don't have connections to them, ping them on LinkedIn. When I was starting out 6 years ago in venture, I didn't know anyone in VCs, and I would just ping different partners saying, hey, I'm Doreen, I just moved here. I loved your blog about XYZ. I would love to get together for coffee and learn more about what you do. And really it worked because I had several meetings like that, and one led to another, which led to another. Actually, Dov Moran, who was gonna lecture for you guys in a few weeks, he is one of those. So he is one of my cold pings, and he helped connect me to Lotan, who helped connect me to the person that, I think the person that hired me at Microsoft, something like that. So cold pings work. Obviously, be personal when you're pinging them. Don't just ask for something, but try and phrase it so that they get something out of it too. Yeah. Finally, of course, warm reach out. So the VCs in Israel are very connected to each other. We have a bunch of groups. Everyone knows everyone. Groups on WhatsApp, I mean. So see if you have a warm connection to someone. It's always good. I don't think it's better personally. I know a lot of people prefer warm rather than cold, but at Glilot, we built the advisory board, 80% was cold. So it does work. You just have to phrase the reach out the right way and figure out how to connect with them. Yeah, and when it comes to choosing who's going to be your lead investor, you obviously want to connect on the human level. They're not just the ones giving you money. They're the ones that are going to work with you and be on your board and have decision-making power. And you want to like them. You want them to be friends as well. You want to have that friendship because you're going to go through, again, tough times, and you want to know that the person next to you is someone that you trust. Finally, there's strategic angels and strategic advisors. Strategic angels are ones that you'll want as part of your seed round because they have strong names and strong connections. So when it comes to of course, serial entrepreneurs. A lot of the time in Glilot, we would, when we're about to close a deal with a startup, we'll bring in 6 different serial entrepreneurs who want to angel invest. A lot of these guys and girls want to continue to invest in innovation. They do this a lot. They have 30 companies in their portfolio. Talking about, the founders of, let's say, Wiz and Armis and Demisto and those. So strategic angels is important because they've been there, they have the right connections, and having them, in your PR or on your website or in thought leadership blogs that you write is really important to help strengthen and build your credibility and your brand. Same thing with advisors, by the way, but advisors are more so potential customers of yours. So I would say the CISO is it's better for you to have them as an advisor because they're the ones that you're going to talk to, let's say once a month, once a quarter, kind of pick ideas, brainstorm ideas with him or her, and really have them help you with your strategy. So it's really good to have these types of CISOs or CTOs or whatever matches the domain that you're in on your board as well. So you'll want them for feedback, connection to buyers, and of course, building your credibility. And these groups here, the angels and the advisors, they're people that should come from all those market discussions that you had, the market validation process that you just went through. And again, it's not like you should have an idea and then market and then this. It's all kind of mixed in together. So when you have these market validation discussions with these C-level executives, let's say one of them is really mamash af al hara'ayon, and he wants access to your platform tomorrow. So obviously that's very, very good. And you want to then take advantage of that, see how further you can work with that person. Does that person maybe want to be on your advisory board? Do you want them on your advisory board? And so on and so forth. So there's always ways to double down on these good introductions and these good discussions to create very strong win-wins for the long term, not just for the short term. So everything that you do should be, more for the long term, not just a market validation discussion of 30 minutes and I'm done. No, it's I'm meeting this person and now I'm starting the relationship with them. And who knows what can happen in the future. I want to continue to find ways to engage with them, continue to find ways, to loop them into the company if I want them, of course. And there's always more ways to do that. Okay, so what does all of that mean for you? Obviously, it means that you have trusted partners to rely on because you're able now, instead of focusing on this tiny details, you're able to have a large vision from day one. You are able to focus on that longer term growth rather than just what's happening next month. You're able to tackle those big players from the beginning, not just in 3 years from now. You're able to achieve those milestones at a fast rate, have good momentum, raise your next round, beat the competition, etc. But just remember that all of these milestones, I guess, are powered by that network of yours. All the people that are with you, that back you, whether it's advisors, whether it's angels, whether it's your VC, whether it's experts in various things. Like, I have someone that is a PR expert that I work with. He's the only one I work with when I do any sort of PR. I love him. I trust him. He knows exactly what he's doing. This guy, I've introduced to tons of different startups. So you want to keep these types of relationships going because they're all going to be part of your journey in one way or the other. Okay, so let's say I have a good idea. I have my market validation. I'm ready to raise capital. So before I go into it, I want to remind you guys, what does a VC need? Get into the mind of the investor for a second. It's very similar to a startup. Both need to raise capital. Both need to generate revenue or invest in good companies that will return a profit. And finally, return that initial investment to the shareholders and take home the profit, right? So in order to raise capital to fund your business, this is what you can expect from a discussion with the VC. I'll start with the left side. So various things you can put in your investment deck, starting with, of course, you. This is the most important part, especially for seed investment, because, you know, the idea that you're going to have, it's going to change a lot. You know, it's rarely the idea that you're going to have a year from now. Things are going to change, but you are going to stay the same. So the team is the most important. So don't just write, you know, a picture and a name, but actually talk about your distinctions and your achievements and what did you do in the last role, and, you know, how many years were you there, and etc. Also, this is a good place to put in everyone that I just mentioned before. So any advisors that you have, any strategic angel investors that want to join the round, even if they haven't yet joined it, but let's say they showed interest. So that's still good. You can put it in somewhere on the slide, or just kind of with an asterisk and say, the second we sign the term sheet, they want to put in, I don't know, $300,000, something like that. And any key hires that you have. So that's the team, the problem you're solving, what's the urgency, why is it urgent to solve it today and not in a year from now? Because, you know, sometimes you have a great idea, but the timing is just not right. You know, it's too early. So that's important. How are people solving it today? Think about the fact that if there's not much that's being done to solve the problem today, is it really that urgent? So think about that. And then any related resources, like, you know, let's say it's my solution is going to save 80% of the time it takes the developer to do this, for example. Then you go into the solution, and this talks about the product and the technology. Who's my buyer? Who's my user? What's my short-term solution, aka my MVP, versus my longer-term vision? What's my roadmap look like? Then you can get into the market sizing. So this is, of course, tied to the problem. How much is being spent to solve this problem? So I'm sure some of you at least have heard of TAM, SAM, and SOM. So the total addressable market, the serviceable addressable market, serviceable obtainable market. So it starts wide and ends narrow, and it really shows, you know, how much market share can I potentially have? How much money can I make from what size market? Obviously, you want to show also that this market keeps growing year over year, because that increases the potential of success. After that, you want to write your go-to-market strategy, the competitive landscape. I will say that it's important to write the competition, even if there's not another exact company that's solving what you are doing. Because if you go and say, well, there's no competition, so that's a red flag, because it means, I guess, there's not really a problem. Because if no one's really solving it, then is there really a problem there? Or you just didn't do the research properly. So even if there's not a specific direct competitor, like another startup or a corporate, there's always, you know, how is it being solved today? What's the competition? And then your validation. So it's really a wow factor for a VC to receive a deck. And on one of those slides, have it say, you know, discussions with 55 CISOs, 47 want access when MVP is ready, and then show some sort of graph with the feedback that you got and the patterns that you see from the questions that you've asked. That's that. And then I will mention the VC gut feeling, right? Because of course we do have gut feelings. It's just natural, and a lot of people have questions about it. So there's things that aren't communicated that a VC or anyone pays attention to, right? How does the team get along? Do the founders talk over each other? Are they arguing? Are they, you know, on the contrary, are they finishing each other's sentences and there's a clear, strong bond between them? You know, how's their chemistry? Do I think that the CEO has what it really takes to lead? Does he have those qualities? Does he have the demeanor to lead a global business right now? On the other side of that is the CEO coachable? You know, a lot of the time the CEO and VCs struggle because they have certain opinions or things that they want the company to take, and the CEO is kind of stubborn and, you know, doesn't really want to hear it. And this can be, quite frustrating for everybody, right? So is the CEO coachable? Can I see you as a partner that's more equal? Can I see you being a leader and being coachable at the same time? And of course, do I trust you, right? Because you're not going to sign a company where you have a bad feeling about one of the founders. And this can be solved by just making sure to not hide any weaknesses, just say them. There's no harm in it because everyone has weaknesses. Obviously, you don't want to say something that's going to impact the way they view your company, but say it in the right way, in a gentle way, address it if it needs to be addressed. If not, it doesn't need to be. And then most importantly is personalized, right? So you're not going to approach all the VCs with the same exact pitch or deck. You want to personalize everything that you do moving forward. This is like a very general feedback. It's like the most important feedback I could probably give you guys. If I'm going and talking to Glilot, for example, something that could impress the team is saying, yeah, I've read all about your advisory board. Actually, as part of my market validation, I talked with Adrian and I talked with Gerard and I talked with all these other people.
זהו, סליחה דורין.
לא, הכל טוב.
אני מאמין שגם כל האמריקאים הצטרפו פתאום ברבע שעה האחרונה.
כן?
כן, הכל טוב. יש לנו כמה שקופית אחת, 2, אני רוצה שיהיה לנו גם זמן לשאלות. אני לא רוצה גם שתאחרי.
וואו.
כן, בסדר גמור.
אופס. אוקיי, טוב, יאללה, אני...
הכל בסדר. אנחנו נהנים, זה העומס ניסיון שלך, פשוט מורגש וזה...
Okay, third, generating revenue, product market fit, and go-to-market fit, 2 most critical pain points that a startup will have, especially at the beginning. I'm talking about only at the beginning right now. So when you're a seed in a company, you want to, address these milestones the right way. Otherwise, you'll just end up wasting a lot of time and money. So you want to get to product market fit. You want to hire the right executives. Your first VP sales, your first VP marketing, they're going to set the tone for the rest of your company's culture. And they're going to help you get to that 1 million in ARR milestone, which is very, very critical to that, then raising your round A, for example. Then when you get to be a more, early growth company, you're focused on new product lines, expansion, category leadership, customer success. And then beyond that, you're focused mostly on partners. So strategic partners, value-add resellers, people that, it's a better together type thing. Well, actually, I have a lot more. So pain point number 1, marketing. If you guys want to learn more about how to launch out of stealth or build your first website, you can do it very simply in like 2 months, let's say. Your messaging, you should talk to different messaging experts. Events is really important, especially when you're young, in order to build a community. Like something that's cybersecurity, one of the portfolio companies at Glilot that I worked on from the beginning to their exit was building their CISOs community. So they actually built their own cider CISOs community of 40 different CISOs that would come to events. And, this is really smart because it gives them access that's pretty much unlimited to the market at all times. And it continuously engages their potential customers. So it's very important. I went over executive hiring. So there's all sorts of different processes around working with headhunters and things like that. Category leadership is another thing that we can dive into next time. Strategic partnerships, map them out, figure out how you're going to pitch it such that it's better together. Meaning if I work with you, it's a win-win. So if you package my solution into yours, you're going to help your existing customers solve needs that they couldn't solve without me. So it's better for you if you work with me. This is what I mean by better together. NightDragon, for example, is very, very strong in this partnerships because this is the biggest pain of companies that are in that growth stage. So we actually have, you know, hundreds of different relationships with partners and value-add resellers and provide special terms to our portfolio companies, etc. And that's it. Profit, that's the last stage, obviously. You can do secondaries before you exit. So let's say, you know, after your B round, and then the founders often are, you know, worried that they won't see actually the millions until the exit, but it's not true. You can always do secondaries. And a lot of the time the VC likes it because it keeps the founder in the game for longer, right? Because then you might not want to exit that fast, but you'll want to continue growing. And then finally exit versus IPO, things to consider, topic for another time. That's it. Does anyone have questions?
קודם כל, דורין, תודה רבה. כמה שנים? בקרנות? 15?
לא.
אני צוחק, זה נראה כמו יותר, כל המידע והניסיון. קודם כל, פאוזי, הנפלא, רשם לך פה איזה ברכת תודה, ואולי יזדמן לכם להיפגש, אז יש גם את ארז שביקש את המייל שלך, אז אם תוכלי רק ממש ל10 שניות לפתוח רק את השקופית עם המייל, ככה כן, שהחבר'ה פה יעתיקו. חברים, מי שרוצה באמת לתקשר עם דורין, כמו שדורין אמרה, ובאמת זה מאוד מוערך, כן, אז חשוב לי להגיד, אנשים שעובדים בקרנות, ואני אישית גם מכיר את דורין, הזמן מאוד מוגבל, ובאמת בכל זאת מצליחים לפנות את הזמן, אז זה הדרכי קשר לדורין, דרך המייל. דורין, ריכזנו פה שאלות ככה שאספנו גם מלפני ההרצאה. את יודעת, אנחנו נמצאים היום במציאות שאי אפשר להתעלם ממנה. שנייה רגע. דוד, הנה כן, דוד שנמצא בטקסס, כמובן אנחנו נשלח לך את הכל, ולאבא אנחנו גם נתחשב באמריקאים, שבדיוק מתעוררים כנראה. דורין, מה השלב המינימלי להגיע לקרן? זאת אומרת, מהניסיון שלך, גם בגלילות אצל קובי...
מה זה אומר שלב מינימלי, אבל?
זאת אומרת שיש כל מיני קרנות שמבחינתם, אם אין לך מוצר ולקוח משלם, אז כרגע זה לא הטיימינג הנכון, ויש כאלו, לדוגמה, שמבחינתם 1,000,000 מחזור מחירות, ויש כאלו שבכלל early stage, ומהניסיון שלך, בתקופה הנוכחית כמובן, לאו דווקא מהרזומה המעבר, מתי הכי נכון באמת פרקטית להגיע לקרן ולהציע את ההזדמנות?
אוקיי, נראה לי שב-2021 קודם כל, you didn't have to have anything. You could just have a really good idea and a really strong team. זה עדיין קיים ככה. עכשיו, קרן כמו, you know, a very strong early stage VC is not going to say no to a serial entrepreneur's team with a good idea that have already talked to 50 different CISOs who all want to buy their platform. This is like a gold mine for VCs. Obviously, it's, you know, it's good to have something, some sort of platform, some sort of MVP to show. And if you have a paying customer, that's like, wow. But in my days, you didn't need to have a paying customer. You need to have market validation. You need to have, let's say, people that want to use your platform as soon as it's ready. So you already have a pipeline that's ready to go, but you don't need to have like $1 million in sales. This is something that is more realistic for companies that are now going to raise A.
Maybe in term sheet, you know. לאו דווקא הכנסות בחברה. יכול להיות גם term sheet או LOI ל-ROI קדימה. שזה משהו שקרנות, אני יודע שבאמת מסתכלות על זה בצורה מאוד חיובית. מאשר ללא כלום.
Of course it's חיובית, definitely, but it's like not that realistic for founders.
דורין, שאלה שנייה, ממוצע תהליך של בדיקת נאותות והשקעה מקרן, כמה זמן לוקח?
רגע, say that again?
בממוצע, שקרן רוצה להשקיע, כמה זמן לוקח ה-due diligence?
Okay. Again, I'm talking about current market conditions. I'll say that before COVID, it could take, a couple of months, a month, 2 months, something like that. During COVID, we needed to make decisions in 24, 48 hours. And today it went back to pre-COVID levels. So it'll take a few months.
Thank you.
But if it's a company, I'll say that אם זה צוות שכבר יש לו track record מאוד מאוד חזק, the VCs will be on top of them, like,
לעצמי.
right away.
זה נקודה מאוד חשוב לי להגיד לקהל פה. אני רואה לא מעט חברות, וגם למען היושר, גם אני בסטארט-אפ הראשון שלי שגיתי בזה מאוד. אני יצאתי לסבב מסוים של גיוס, ולא הייתי מוכן אפילו לבדיקת נאותות. זאת אומרת, שאתם יוצאים לגיוס מאוד מאוד חשוב גם להיות מוכן לבדיקות נאותות. בדיקת נאותות, או בשפה המקצועית יותר due diligence, זה מאוד נרחב, זה לאו דווקא פיננסי או הטכנולוגיה, זה דברים שממש נכנסים לרזי החברה. תודה דורין.
גם אם יש לכם, if you've already had those discussions in the market validation, you can actually really help out your VC when they're doing due diligence, right? Because a very important part of due diligence is market validation. So if you've already done it, you can say, well, actually, if you want to talk to these 4 CISOs that have already seen my platform, here you go. Here's their names and their titles and their, let's hop on a call. This is something really impressive to a VC.
Thank you so much. שאלה אחרונה לפחות ממה שפה, האם אמורה להיות ציפייה מסוימת מקרן גם להוביל את הסבב המשך? זאת אומרת, את the next step.
Typically no. בדרך כלל לא. אם הובלת את seed, אתה בדרך כלל לא מוביל את A, אבל אתה מצטרף. אז יש כל פעם leader חדש, and if you're a very hands-on VC, typically, we'll help bring the next investor because, it's a connection of ours. It's much easier. We want VC partners to lead the next round that we trust. So it's all about bringing the people you actually want to work with. And it helps in negotiations and signing the terms that you want. But typically, to answer the original question, if I lead seed, typically someone else will lead A and someone else will lead B. But I'll join if it's a company I believe in.
Yeah. Thank you. אמיר, אתה יכול להוציא מהשטק ולשאול אם תרצה. שמחה.
אז שלום נעים מאוד, אני אמיר. רציתי לשאול מה יכול להוות מכשול לבדיקת נאותות. אולי ניצן מהניסיון ומעבר עם הסטארט-אפ הראשון. תוכל להגיד. או דורין, תוכל לתת דוגמה מקרן VC.
אני אגיד מהצד שלי, ואז באמת דורין תגיד מהצד של ה-VC. אני חושב שהטעות שלי הייתה, יש אתגר מאוד גדול להיות מנכ"ל, עובד ומשרת לקוחות, וגם לגייס כסף על אחת כמה וכמה, שהרבה מאוד משאבים מהחברה אמורים להיות לטובת הבדיקת נאותות. בדיקת נאותות בסופו של דבר היא מסחרית, עסקית, פיננסית וטכנולוגית במקרה של מזמי טכנולוגיה. במקרים רבים גם צריך אקסטרו דברים. אם אתה שואל אותי, אני כיום הייתי פשוט עושה הרכב מסוים בחברה שהוא מוקדש נטו לצורך בדיקת הנאותות, שהיא גם תקרה בזמן טוב וסביר. יש הרבה פינג פונגים אני קורא לזה, והאתגר שלי אישית, שוב, כל אחד והאתגר שלו, זה שגם הייתי צריך במקביל להפעיל עסק עובד, וזה לאו דווקא בשלב שלא הייתי חשוף או בשלב שלא הייתי קיים. זה בגדול. דורין, אם יש לך מהצד שלך, מה יכול להוות מכשול בבדיקת נאותות?
Okay, so any of those red flags. So if let's say I don't believe, let's say the team is strong, but I don't believe they're the right ones to solve this problem. If let's say I don't maybe trust them, I don't believe they have the right qualities to build the company. So anything about the team, anything about the lack of urgency. So if I'm now evaluating a seed company, I'm going to go talk to 15 different CISOs, and they're going to meet you and they're going to hear your pitch, and then I'm going to talk to them, and if none of them believe in your platform, this is a clear red flag. Although I won't say it's 100% going to להפיל את העסקה, כי בעבר זה קרה ועדיין השקענו. So that's important because, you know, the idea always changes, but the team doesn't. So the team is the most important part. Yeah, and a lot of other things can להפיל את זה. The terms that you want are too high, or, you know, you want, let's say, another VC to come and co-lead, and we don't want to co-lead, we only want to lead. All sorts of things like that around the terms.
Thank you very much, appreciate. תודה ניצן.
שמחה רבה. טוב, אנחנו קצת חורגים מהזמן, צפיתי את זה וזה בסדר. דורין, אני מאוד מאוד מודה לך, באמת מכל הלב. אני חושב שבאמת ההרצאה הייתה מאוד אינפורמטיבית ועמוסה, בנימה חיובית של המילה. כמובן כולם, מי שישתתף ומי שפחות, אנחנו נעביר את ההרצאה, כמובן באישור דורין, וכל מה שקשור לפניות של דורין, כמובן זה אל מול דורין, במייל שלה. אני שוב מודה לכולם, אנחנו ניפגש, את הזכרת את דוב, דוב הוא ההרצאה הבאה שלנו ב-26 לחודש, אז אנחנו ניפגש שם, גם דוב ייתן מהניסיון שלו, מהרקע שלו, מהזווית שלו, גם כיזם, גם כמשקיע, גם כבעל קרן, שיהיה בריא, שערותיו הלבנות מעידות הרבה על האקספיריאנס שלו. אני מאחל לכולם המשך בהצלחה, המשך ערב טוב, תחזרו לאנשים, תחזרו לבעלים, למשפחה, זה הכי חשוב. תודה לכם, תודה דורין, שוב.
תודה רבה. ביי לכולם.
להתראות, ביי ביי.